Takeaway for this video is always record the police. Walking across the street in a manner not fit for the police state can often end in serious injury or death. Not necessarily because of a car running you over. The enforcement of jaywalking laws in this country have gone to the extreme, and a new settlement out of Detroit shows just how far cops are willing to go to protect the people from crossing the street in the wrong way. A guy in Detroit has learned the hard way how any contact with the police can turn into a freedom and potentially life-threatening situation. Police contacts with citizens for things like a broken taillight, window tint, and loud music can and sometimes does turn into a serious life or death situation. Jaywalking is no exception. Like I've reported for years now, police often use the victimless crime of jaywalking to escalate the use of force against people in a city. 27-year-old Steele Hughes walked across the street in June 2017 after he and his fiancée left Fishbone's restaurant in Greektown. Here's how the local news reported on that incident.
Jailed after jaywalking.
Tonight we are bringing you the story of a Detroit man who had never been in trouble with the law but found himself facing time in prison.
He says police lied to cover up their own mistake.
The time where, Eric Gardner just happened, Sandra Bland just took place. I was scared I was going to get another face on the shirt.
Steele Hughes never had trouble with police until a night 2 years ago when he was leaving dinner in Greektown with his fiancée.
I was crossing here. We were getting ready to walk over to this parking structure right here.
Hughes did what our cameras saw lots of people do in Greektown. He jaywalked, cutting across Monroe Street when he said traffic was clear. Cops in Detroit seldom give out tickets for jaywalking, but Hughes was about to get one.
An officer made a call, get out of the street. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have jaywalked. I could acknowledge that.
He finished crossing the street, but said the officers weren't finished with him.
Next thing I know, a hand grabs my shoulder, and then my wrist, then I'm thrown to the ground.
Surveillance video captured the melee, which escalated quickly. Passers-by pulled out their cell phones, recording Hughes on his back. In front of his fiancée, officers cuffed him, then put him in the squad car and brought him to jail. The charges, disorderly conduct and obstructing police. His arrest was posted to YouTube.
And all of a sudden, I was this young male that was being arrested online.
But what police said to justify Hughes' arrest is what disturbs him the most. Said one officer, Hughes shrugged violently away, then swore at the officers, a charge he denies. Another said he took an aggressive posture, that he was blading his body, leading the officer to grab his left hand before he could launch an attack.
I would have no reason to attack 3 armed officers in downtown Detroit after a date night.
Were you armed with anything?
Not at all. I had a carryout. I had some crawfish and rice.
And as for how Hughes ended up on his back, that wasn't the officer's fault, they said. Hughes lost his balance and fell to the ground.
It has all the appearance of a takedown.
We showed the video to Reginald Crawford, a retired Detroit police officer who spent years on the city's Board of Police Commissioners. What officers said and what the video showed, he said doesn't match.
Does it look like he's about to launch an attack? No, he doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't have the appearance of that.
They began to manufacture their statements in order to justify and support their actions.
Herbert Sanders is Hughes' attorney.
It's scary to think what might have happened if there wasn't video. This could have escalated and he could be dead.
After the arrest, Hughes sat in a Detroit jail, and not just for a few hours.
I was given an orange jumpsuit, had a mugshot taken, and I was put in a cell with felons. I sat there, slept there, and used the bathroom there for 3 days.
After 72 hours behind bars, he was released, only to learn he'd been suspended from his job for 2 weeks pending his criminal case. It wasn't long after that the Wayne County prosecutor decided there wasn't one.
Ken Worthy turned down their warrant. I was not charged with anything.
Once the case against him fell apart, Hughes sued the Detroit Police Department. And last month, the city settled, costing taxpayers $45,000. What it cost Steele Hughes, he says, is more than money.
If I see cops, 2 hands on the steering wheel, it changes the way I move. You shouldn't have to be guarded or fearful of an officer. Their job is to serve and protect, not to strike fear in anybody.
None of the officers in this case were disciplined for their conduct, but a supervisor would later say that police should not have grabbed Hughes in the first place and should have instead used verbal commands. We should add Hughes' ticket for jaywalking. It was dismissed.
A study on the cases in which pedestrians received tickets for jaywalking or crossing the street improperly found that most individuals were ticketed in error because the officer didn't know the law. While some law enforcement agencies admitted that their officers used crosswalk tickets as a way to stop and question people they suspect of criminal activity, it needs to be understood that several of the officers who attempt to issue the tickets or to find out more information about the individuals they believe were suspects have also been accused of excessive force. Examples include a man who was tackled to the ground and beaten by police in Millville, New Jersey, a man who was beaten, stripped naked, and mocked by police in Del Paso Heights, California, and a teenager who was tackled and choked to the ground by police in Fresno, California. All of these cases have one thing in common. The safety of the subject who was allegedly crossing the street improperly was used as an excuse by officers who then threatened the subject's safety by using excessive force.
33-year-old Johnny Rush here was on his way home when two officers stopped him and accused him of crossing an empty street illegally. Officer Chris Hickman can later be seen punching and tasering Rush. You might find the following video disturbing.
I can't, man. I can't breathe. 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 Oh my God. Ow. 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 Ow.
Rush.
Okay. Ow.
Well, that clip there was leaked 6 months after the incident took place. Anti-police brutality activist Michelle Gross says the police department's refusal to act on the video until its leak is alarming.
The video was held by the police department all of this time, and all of this time they could have taken action against Officer Hickman and Officer Ruggieri, and they chose not to. You know, supervisors look at that footage right away, or at least they're supposed to, and clearly he had no fear of any kinds of accountability related to that conduct. This must be standard operating procedure in that particular police department, and frankly, it is in many police departments. These videos must always be made public. We have no way to monitor police conduct and to understand how our police are operating if we can't watch those videos that they themselves collect on their own activities.
On your stomach. Now. I'm sorry. Oh, he shot me, man. Oh my God. You didn't do. You didn't do. You hear me? I'm losing my breath. Your breath.
Show me your hand. Shoot me.
Please put it down. I don't want to live.
That's fine. Don't touch my butt. There, man. Off of me.
Put your hands behind your back.